Patrick Mahomes does not know what rebuilding is, and he probably never will.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Your Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. We're celebrating today. We're going to talk about the parade, some of the things that came out there, and what it means as we roll forward today. Welcome to the show. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next one, whether you're into the NBA or you want to get right into team building around the NFL. There's a show for everybody, and they're free on every platform we can come up with. Thank you again for being with us. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, as well as RGRFootball.com.
And I'm Chris Clark. Thank you all for listening. If you haven't already, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell on YouTube, and leave us reviews on iTunes and Spotify. We do appreciate those. Lots to talk about when you start looking at the parade in Kansas City. Quite a lot going on.
Yeah, back and forth and back and forth. We'll talk about the O-line here later. We'll talk about everybody that participated. But the comment that kept coming up today, and I love the way that Patrick put it, is that he didn't even understand what the concept of rebuilding was, because this was such a unique season when everyone counted them out and thought the offense in particular was not going to be able to perform without its cheetah out front. This was, I think, vindication. That was kind of the theme of the day for me from everybody involved. But it wasn't just Patrick. I just like the way that he put it the best. Brett Veach mentioned it. I think everybody kind of had it on the tip of their tongue.
I love the way Veach said it. This is how we rebuild in Kansas City. We win the world champions. We win the world championship. It wasn't exactly that, but that was his message. This is how we rebuild in Kansas City. We win. Fantastic message, and quite frankly, everybody was talking about it. Travis Kelce got on stage and talked about it again, about how everybody was counting the Chiefs out. He went back to April, and I think he really, you could have gone back to March when the trade first happened, and you started looking at people counting Kansas City out, saying that they weren't going to win the AFC West, they weren't going to make the playoffs.
I completely agree, and for everybody who might not, if you're a new listener to us, we've covered this team going on 6 years through the most of the Andy Reid era, and certainly through 2 Super Bowls. And that's what really kind of rang through, is that they always talk about motivation. If you take sports psychology classes, if you get into the inner workings of locker rooms in any sport around the world, it is always a common factor that a lot of teams that end up being successful have that circle the wagons moment, and that attitude that if you're going to doubt us, we're going to prove you wrong. If you're against us, we're going to get together and overcome you doubting us. And I think that maybe that's something that through all of our camp trips, all of our game breakdowns, film breakdowns, everything that we've done this season, maybe that was a simmering issue in the locker room for the staff, for the players, for everyone in the organization that we just didn't recognize, because they've gotten to this point that excellence is so much the expectation that they didn't show us any of that. And it just simmered away underneath, driving the whole season along. And we were kind of oblivious to it.
Yeah, it seems to be a rallying cry, though. It seems like the entire team took that up and decided, okay, you don't believe in us, we're going to show you what we're going to be capable of doing, and we're going to go out and do it. And, you look back, obviously they won the Super Bowl 38-35. They started in Arizona. They ended the season in Arizona. They scored almost 40 points against the best defense in football this year in that Super Bowl game, and they scored over 40 points, I believe, against Arizona in the first week. So, I mean, they started the season a lot of the same way that they kind of finished the season.
Agreed. And I'll tell you the other thing that I like about today's attitude, and it wasn't like it was overly aggressive. I thought it was jovial. I felt like the parade was better organized than it was last time. I wasn't worried about Patrick falling off the stage when I saw this, so that's a big plus. I was a little nervous the first time, I have to say.
He almost fell off the bus, though.
Okay, well, there's that. That would be a negative outcome as well. But the whole thing just really set me aback in the air that this team expects to be here. This was more, despite the age of this roster. And we're going to talk about all the contributions from young players, new players, etc. here coming up later in the show. But this team expects to be there. They carried themselves like veterans, like guys that have been here before, even though a lot of them have not. And I think that comes top down from leadership, obviously from player leadership as well as coaching and GM, etc. But that's the thing that I think sets up this concept, that they're all have this attitude that you can count us out while we're rebuilding and we're still going to get it done. Imagine what happens when we're not so cash strapped, when we haven't lost all these things, when we feel we can actually improve the way we do things and the people that we do them with in terms of the roster and the staff, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and that's something that they could actually be in a situation to do in 2023. There's a lot of stuff that we'll get to in the offseason when we start looking at cap, what they have available, when we start looking at the draft as well. They were actually one of the top, I think, Over the Cap did a simulation of what teams have available going into 2023, where they sit. And I think Kansas City was in the top 10. And they're in the top 10 in 2023 going into the season, going in after winning the Super Bowl. They're going to be hosting the draft in a couple of months. It's going to be huge in Kansas City. And the best thing I think that you heard from everybody that spoke, or at least the main people that spoke, was basically exactly what you said. They expect to be here. Patrick Mahomes expects to be here. Travis Kelce expects to be here. This is where they always planned on being. And Brett Veach expects to be here. Clark Hunt expects to be here. They all have that mentality at this point. And Mahomes also had one more message for Kansas City. Well, they had a lot of more messages, but one of the other messages I really loved: we're not done. They want more.
Mm-hmm. The hunger has to carry over through the offseason. I think that it will. But what was unique about this season? We're going to talk about some other guys that had some things to say today that were clearly pointed. And then what does this roster makeup mean for the future? How do they go next to take all this experience that they've wrapped up in there, in what is a lot of players their first or second year that have this experience now? How do they move that forward? We'll do that after a message from our pals.
If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but you don't want to compromise taste, then we've got the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. They are so delicious you won't think that they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And now you don't have to wait to order them online. You can actually go get them in Walmart or your local Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart and get a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, you can get a 13-bar box of brownie, batter, and churro. You can thank us later.
So
there was another group that was pretty fired up on there.
It was a theme. Like, again, what we don't hear, this is an organization that has experience keeping things under wraps. We all know, those of us that are in this market, how little information leaks out from this organization that is not intended to. And one of the things was just how aggravated the offensive line group was after all the talk of how badly they were prepared to face the Eagles front. One guy in particular seemed to capitalize on it, but I think it was the other bookend tackle that really surpassed all expectation, including mine. Mitch Schwartz has been defending Andrew Wiley adamantly ever since the game ended about his performance and his ability to get there. Orlando Brown coined the phrase 0 sacks, put that on a t-shirt. Well, they did today on multiple flavors of t-shirts. I'm going to have to do that myself, I think. And that just kind of echoes into like how bought in they are, like how, I hate to say it, how Michael Jordan-esque this whole team is becoming, because we know it has to start with Patrick, but any slight now can be used for fuel. And I think that's a mark of a maturing group and a team that can really get back to this game over and over and over if you're properly motivated.
Yeah, and motivation is going to be huge with this organization. But you also start looking at this team, and I know we will talk more about this in the coming days, but they are going to have some pieces that they've got to get figured out. Andrew Wiley's a free agent. Orlando Brown is a free agent. The thought is that they're probably going to franchise tag him again. We'll see if that's the road they take. But there's going to be a lot of questions about those two guys in particular. I would imagine Wiley's probably going to get a long-term deal somewhere else. I just don't think that Kansas City can afford to pay him what he's probably going to want, and I get that. So guys are going to have to start looking at Another one, and I know we talk an offensive line, but another one is Juju. Juju says he wants to be back in Kansas City. He can't expect top tier wide receiver money and be back in Kansas City. That's just not going to work. So a lot of things to watch over the next couple of weeks. What I did love from the offensive line, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, they were both wearing the 0 sacks t-shirt. Orlando Brown and Joe Tooney, I believe, had their own 0 sacks t-shirt. So a lot of guys doing different things with those. And really they took pride in the fact that they didn't allow anybody to hit Patrick. And I know we're talking about the parade, but Orlando Brown went on media and talked about how the offensive line took pride in what they were able to do and keep Patrick Mahomes upright to where he wasn't getting hit, to where he wasn't getting sacked. That's a matter of pride with that offensive line. I think it's a great sentiment to have.
Yeah, it has to be. You heard me scream about it all week last week here on this show, on RGR, pretty much everywhere that I spoke into any kind of microphone. I told you this offensive line has to do its job because everything revolves around the quarterback. And I think we have to just enlighten that more and more. Like, nothing has changed. Doesn't matter if he's injured or if he loses a weapon here or there. It's still all about this quarterback. Without him, nothing goes. I don't care how good the backup is or how good the run game becomes. It's about Patrick Mahomes. And the thing that I come away with from this whole thing today at the parade, all the comments post game, is that from us here on the outside, not being in the building every day, we have a bit of a drier take on performance and contribution to this team on the field, because that's all that we have to go off. I think internally in that team, in the locker room, in the offensive line room, I think you're going to see that there's a lot more value and a lot more camaraderie and a lot more interest in keeping Orlando Brown in particular there for long term. He does seem to have that spike about him to help others raise their level of play. He raised his level of play through the playoffs as well. And what seems like it might be cut and dry, like tag and trade or just a tag, like there may be factors inside the organization that drive more towards a contract because of the things that we don't see day to day.
No, and you're absolutely correct. That definitely is something that could play a part in this. And there's a lot of things that we don't see on the inside that we're never going to be able to see. We're never going to have an insight on. And maybe that's something that brings back Orlando Brown. We've talked about other guys, MVS with the season he had, and then you start getting into the playoffs and you start watching different shows and you see Travis Kelce just going up and saying, "That's my dog." And, saying I'm not going to repeat exactly what he said, a little bit of a swear there. But, the point is that those guys are going to bat for each other every single day. And yes, they all know it's a business, but they're all bought in. And this entire team had to be bought in order to win the Super Bowl, because that's the only way you're going to win the Super Bowl is you have to be bought in from top to bottom. And with the way that they came out, the way their defense was flying around the field, the way they were hitting, and I know we're going to talk about the rookies more in a little bit, and I think we've talked about this a little bit as well, but you start looking at contributions they got in this game. A guy like Leo Chanel, who barely plays at all, and still didn't really play that much. I don't think he was in more than 15, 20 snaps at most, and has 5 tackles or 4 tackles. I mean, he was flying to the ball when he was in. And you saw that from everybody. That's a huge indication how this team was bought in. And then the best indication of how this team was bought in is Jet McKinnon, by far. Going down on the 2-yard line, sliding, knowing that he could have got a touchdown, knowing what that is going to mean for him personally, but saying, "No, I want a championship. I don't care about my personal stuff. I want a championship. I want a Super Bowl title." Yeah,
take no chances. They are clearly bought in. And I want to give you a word about how you can get bought in as well from a friend of ours. We are brought to you today by FanDuel. You can buy into them. And I know that the football season has come to an end. There's still props you can make out there on the draft, combine, etc. But it is midway through the NBA season. And we're approaching March Madness, Rock Chalk. So you can get in there and get your money on the line there, as we always say around here, if you download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now they're giving you a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 of free bets on top of your first bet if you don't win. It is pure insurance, and it's only available over at FanDuel, the sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can find it in any app store, and they'll let you bet on anything from money line to point scores to all kinds of particular props on players, games, etc. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine them for a big same-game parlay, and you can make all kinds of bets there. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can see it over there next to Chris. That's FanDuel.com to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the NFL. Now, I started the show at the top that Patrick Mahomes doesn't understand what rebuilding is. This season is certainly not going to give him any more clarity about it, because that's just how rare this whole thing is. And he couldn't have done what he did, and this team couldn't have done what they did if they didn't have contributions from two groups of people on the field. I know there's tons of people behind the scenes in the training room, et cetera, et cetera. Barry Rubin calling it a career strength conditioning coach. Cheers, Barry. A lot of people contributed to this. But on the field, it is the second-year players and the rookies that put so much into it. And that's the thing that really has me thinking about, will Patrick ever know what it feels like to be an aging star like Aaron Rodgers that doesn't have a team around him because they couldn't rebuild correctly? You can call it a revamp, a retool, a reload, whatever you want to do. They've certainly set the table to be able to do that without skipping a beat in what even the team, I think, expected to be their lowest season. They've been able to achieve a championship. What does that strike you with? And what do you think is the most important key to that in the young players that played so much this season?
They found the right players. And I know that's easy to say and it's harder to do. But what I mean by that is they went and they found guys that were high character guys. They went and found guys that were going to buy into the system, buy into being part of this Chiefs organization. And a great example of that is the DBs. You go look at all five of those DBs. They got five. I think there's originally five, but now, the 4 or 5 DBs that you look at, and they all got together starting in training camp or starting in OTAs and basically made it a study time. And, at that point, they are focusing on trying to get the defense down, trying to understand what Spags is wanting you to do, trying to understand what they're trying to do in the scheme. All of that plays into it. And for those guys to form that study group and to form that, and it goes further than that because it becomes a bond. It's not just a study group. It becomes a bond between those guys. And each one of them is going to want to play harder for the next one because they're bonded, because they bought in like that. And then you look at the rookie class in total. You look at all the contributions that all the rookies made, and they, as a rookie class, came in and had a huge impact on the Chiefs. You have 4 guys that started basically at times this year, and I'm counting Brian Cook as one of them in the secondary. I think that third safety is kind of a starter role to an extent at least. And then you have George Karlaftis, who was a starter most of the season, and you have a guy in Leo Chanel who didn't play much, but if you were starting in base, he would be a starter. So you have 7 guys there that are making huge 6 that are starting basically. 7 if you count Najee Johnson, who are making huge contributions on this team. And that's just on defense. That doesn't account for what they got on offense.
Pacheco, Sky, I mean, that's 9 solid contributors out of one class. I thought the 2021 class was good. The 2022 class is better. And that's with Nick and Creed, and Trey. So, I mean, it was a high mark to live up to, and they managed to surpass it.
Yep. And the crazy thing is, looking at the Super Bowl, they had 24 new players from their team last year. 24 guys.
Yeah.
You have all those draft picks, and you hit on the draft picks, and you're not going to hit on every single draft pick. But Kansas City pretty much hit on just about every single draft pick. The one you could argue is Kennard, and I get it. But at the same time, I don't think we really know what Kennard is right now. Offensively, you didn't want him to be playing.
True. And he's got a ring right now. He contributed enough to stay on this roster. Right.
And they like what he brings enough to where he's staying on this roster. And maybe he is a guy, how important is it? You look at a guy like Kennard, if he starts to be one of those guys like a Alec Reddy has been for Kansas City, who is likely going somewhere else this offseason. That is still a huge piece and a huge cog that needs to be filled for Kansas City. And they're in that situation where they have him. And then you look at what they have this year. I think they have 11 draft picks based on the Tony trade.
Right.
I think they're going to get three I think they're going to get 3 compensatory picks is what the projection is right now. We'll see if that's what it ends up being. So 11 more picks this year. If they can hit on even half of them, you got to feel great about this team going forward for the next several years, because you're absolutely right. The 2021 class, the 2022 class, and the superstars you still have on your team, plus another class of 3 or 4, just 3 or 4 of them. If you just get 3 or 4 to hit, that's still huge. And that's exactly why I go back to saying what I said a couple of days ago in the draft. I'm not going to be shocked if Kansas City doesn't package some of those picks to move up.
I think they're going to have to, especially because the formula for the compensatory picks is so haphazard. We don't know what the formula is. You never quite know. Sometimes I'm surprised, both positively and negatively, what it is. Looks like a lot of projections look like they're thinking of 5th, 6th, and 7th. You never know. Could get a 4th out of that. I mean, there's a possibility of having 5 picks in the 6th and 7th. You could package those up and get back to the 4th, maybe even to the 3rd if you do it right.
Well, and plus you are in a situation where, you can take those guys if you want, and you could, figure they're going to be guys that are going to be on your practice squad. I mean, that's possible if Kansas City decides they want to stay where they want to stay. I mean, we'll have to see how the draft shakes out. That's the other part of this that we don't know right now. How are these players going to grade out? I know a lot of people are already starting to look at that. We haven't gotten there yet because we've been covering a team that's been in the Super Bowl. So right now, well, okay. Yeah, fair enough. I'm just saying we will get there in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months is we're looking at all the draft picks that Kansas City could have and what they could do in the draft. And I think it's going to be very important to see, how do they continue to build this roster? There's going to be a lot of talk over the next couple of weeks. Where are they at money-wise? Where are they at free agent-wise? Who are they going to be able to bring back? Who do they want to – are they going to release anybody that they have on the roster because they didn't fit what they want to do? Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. And then the big question is going to be Patrick's contract, as it always is going to be year to year. Are they going to do anything with the roster bonus? If they do something with the roster bonus, they could free up a bunch of cap space and do a lot of different things. So a huge deal, because you have Frank Clark and Chris Jones who are free agents after this next coming year. And you could argue that both are probably on contract numbers that you don't want them to stay on. So it's going to be interesting.
I think it is too. And we are going to talk about that, the cap, et cetera. Maybe what some of the looks need to look like here coming up. But if you do want to take a look at the draft class already, you can go subscribe over on my Substack at NFL 33. Me and my staff have already started tackles, edges, the things that are important to Kansas City in the coming years. You can check those out now. If you want camp information, go to Chiefs Corner, the Substack that Chris runs. We're going to talk about some of those here in the next couple of shows. I really want to soak in what happened today with the parade and some of the guys that were standing out, but we'll likely talk about some of them because of the question marks coming up tomorrow. So if you would make sure that you like, sub, and hit that bell if you are on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed if you're hearing us somewhere else, on Spotify, on Apple, whatever you like. We would look forward to your comments on YouTube and at Locked On Chiefs on Twitter. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the parade. We will be back with you to look at who's going to be the question marks. Do they return? Do they go elsewhere? Is it mutual or is it frustrated? We'll do that tomorrow. Thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you then.